on way, he had to pass through Multan. And in Multan, that time there was a Muslim ruler. His name was Abdul Fath Dawood. So when Muhammad Ghaznavi asked Abdul Fath Dawood whether I can come through your territory or not, Abdul Fath Dawood said, "You are not permitted to pass into my territory." And on this issues, both these Muslim kings fought, and as a result of their battle, the Jama Masjid of Multan got decimated. So the same person who goes and destroys a temple in Somnath has to destroy a mosque right in the way, right in the beginning. Now there is another Hindu king. His name was Raja Harshdev. He was ruling in Kashmir in 11th century. And this point which I am telling you is from a book called Raj Tarangini by poet called Kalhan. Kalhan in his book mentions that this Raja Harsh, during his tenure, he created a new designation, and the name of this designation was Devot Patan Nayak, an officer who uproots the idols of God. And who's doing this? This is being done by a Hindu king. But remember, there is a unwritten clause there that don't destroy the statues made of stone. You have also only to uproot the statues which are made of gold and silver. In medieval times, many kings destroyed temples, mosques and churches. And they did this on selective basis. Only those temples, mosques and churches were destroyed which had a huge repository of wealth. Here I must point out that it was not only medieval times. Even current times, last month I read a news item in our Bombay papers. I don't know whether you read it or not. There is a very famous temple there called Siddhi Vinayak Temple. Siddhi Vinayak Temple has a wealth of around 150 crores. Mouth-watering wealth of 150 crores. And there are two groups which are competing with each other as to which group can corner more money out of that. And here also I read other day that Tirupati Balaji temple, its wealth is so much that every year it earns 200 crores out of mere interest of the money. Who was the most cruel, bad and the worst king who ruled this part of the world? Aurangzeb? Very correct. Aurangzeb we regard as one of the worst kings who has ruled this part of the country. Look at Aurangzeb as to what type of king was he. I have no sympathies for Aurangzeb, let me be very clear. We'll see his life, whether he ruled for religion or whether something else dictated his life. Now, to begin with, once the Nawab of Golconda, his name was Tana Shah. Tana Shah did not pay tribute to Aurangzeb for 3 consecutive years. And he said that there is a problem in his country, there is no proper crops, so people do not have money to give the tribute. Now Aurangzeb was very clever. He sent his spies to find out as where is the wealth of Tana Shah. They found out that Tana Shah has hidden his wealth under a mosque in Golconda. Aurangzeb sent his army to destroy the mosque and to take away the wealth to his treasury in Delhi. So those people who think that Aurangzeb was a great Muslim king and an anti-Hindu king just have to think a bit about him. Now second episode about Aurangzeb, this I am quoting from a book, Feathers and Stone by Pattabi Sitaramaiah. Now once Aurangzeb was going from Delhi to Calcutta, and in his entourage there were 44 Hindu kings. Does it ring some bell? Aurangzeb, most cruel, most anti-Hindu king, and there are 44 Hindu kings in his entourage. Okay. Now, here I can ask you that do you know the Navratnas of Akbar's court? Can you tell me some Hindu names from that? Tansen, Birbal, right? So Muslim kings and Hindu officials. I must tell you that Mughal kings did not disturb the social structure of this country. Number one, please remember. Now I can again ask you another KBC type question. The British came here, they plundered the wealth from here. Where did they take it? To England. Simple, right? Now the KBC comes. Where did the Muslim kings take away the wealth of this country? Makkah? Medina, Tehran, or Kabul? Nowhere, right? So they did not take away the wealth from this country. They lived here, died here, and all whatever they did was located around here. So can you see the difference between Mughal kings, Mughal rule, and the British rule? Can you see the rule? Right? Some people, their temperature boils, their blood boils whenever the Muslim kings are mentioned. By and large, they are quiet about the British rule. I don't know the reason. This is a homework for you to find out. Those who shout very much against the terrorism, against the Mughal rule, the Muslim rules, by and large, they will keep quiet about George Bush, British rule, etc., etc. That's of course a incidental point. Coming back to Aurangzeb, during Mughal period, the number of court officials in the Mughal kingdoms went on rising. Now Babar, now these days most of the politics goes on in the name of Babar, na? And if you have to derogate somebody, you can use the word Babar ki aulad. Who invited Babar to come to India? There was a king called Rana Sanga. Rana Sanga that time was having a battle against Ibrahim Lodi. Rana Sanga sent a message to Babar that you come, we will jointly defeat Ibrahim Lodi and we'll rule the country jointly, right? Babar came in partnership, they defeated Ibrahim Lodi. Later on their partnership had a problem. Babar defeated Rana Sanga and he became the emperor, right? But we were talking about 44 Hindu kings in the entourage of Aurangzeb. I must point out that during the reign of Shah Jahan, the number of Hindu court officials was 24%. And we think the Aurangzeb was the most bigoted Muslim king. In his reign, the number of court officials who were Hindus was 33%. Now again, one more question. Who was the chief Senapati, chief general of Akbar? Raja Man Singh, who was one of the major generals of Aurangzeb? Raja Jai Singh, right? So just think about this Hindu-Muslim divide, because generally we will think that, because you can otherwise question my story that where did the 44 Hindu kings come into the Aurangzeb's entourage, right? Now, for 44, these Hindu kings, they were also accompanied by their main wives. I hope you get the point. All their wives were not with them. So how many wives were there in that entourage? How many queens were there in the entourage? 44, right? Now this karma, this entourage is going via Kashi, Banaras, right? Now, when this entourage was passing the city of Banaras, then the queens, 44 queens, they passed on their request to Aurangzeb through their husbands that we are passing through such a holy place, why don't we stay here for the night so that we can have a holy dip in Ganges and have darshan of Lord Vishwanath. Now, when this request went to Aurangzeb, Aurangzeb gladly accepted it, and the entourage stopped at Banaras. Next day morning, 44 queens woke up early, went for holy bath in the Ganges, and after having the bath, they came to the temple and had the darshan of Lord Vishwanath. While returning, how many queens had gone? 44. 43 queens returned. The Maharani of Kutch did not return. Now, this is a very painful story. So Aurangzeb sent his top official to find out as to what has happened, and the top official found out that queen was found in the basement of the Vishwanath temple. When they saw the queen, she did not have clothes on her body, and she was semi-conscious. She was brought into the senses and she was put on the clothes. And when asked as to what has happened to you, she said that the mahant of this temple has raped me. So this was such a painful thing for most of the people, that Aurangzeb gave death punishment to that mahant. And then the king said that this place has become defiled. On the top is the Lord Vishwanath idol, and on the bottom such a dirty thing is going on. The place has become unholy. Aurangzeb said, I will give money from my treasury so that you can build another temple. You said he is the most horrible king. So he gives money from his treasury so that another temple can be built where the idol of Lord Vishwanath can be located. If you go to Kashi Vrindavan area, you will see a temple where the Lord is adorned with gold ornaments whose weight must not be less than a kilogram. And the pujari of the temple has a farman from Aurangzeb. The farman from King Aurangzeb says that I, Alamgir, King Aurangzeb, am donating these ornaments at the service of Lord Krishna. There is a book by Dr. Vishwambarnath Pandey, a very eminent historian of India. The title of the book is The Farmans of King Aurangzeb. And these list different type of donations which Aurangzeb gave to Hindu temples in particular. Once Maratha armies went on to attack Tipu Sultan in Srirangapatnam. Right? Maratha armies, Hindu, Tipu Sultan, Muslim. Now these Maratha armies, when they went and attacked Tipu Sultan, they could not defeat Tipu Sultan. They were coming back. On way back, they demolished the temple in Srirangapatnam. Hindu armies destroyed a temple in Srirangapatnam, and by demolishing that temple, they gave a message to Tipu Sultan that, look, we can come to your territory and destroy your wealth. And Tipu Sultan got that temple repaired. No king can rule without winning the loyalty of the subjects, without respecting the feelings of the people. How was history written in the times of kings? There were courtiers who were poets, whom we called Charan, Bhat, Shair, who used to write. Imagine, I am a court poet in a particular king's court, 500 years ahead earlier. My king goes to the neighboring area, there is a war, and in the war, my king is successful in annexing that kingdom into his kingdom, right? And in the war, 400 people die. 400 people are butchered mercilessly. Now, I am the poet, I have to write the account of this. How will I write? Will I write that my king is so cruel that he killed 400 people to annex the neighboring kingdom? Will I write this? Why? If I write like this, what will happen? I will be the 401st, right? I will be the 401st. I will not write like this. So what will I write? My king is so brave. He is so noble. He is so religious that in order to spread his religion, he has annexed the neighboring kingdom into his kingdom. So all the annexation. Here please note, jihad, crusade, dharma yudh. These three words coming from three traditions. What is the meaning of the jihad? Whatever the meaning, religious meaning, I will not go into that. But most of the kings took the cover of religion in their expansionist programs. They wanted to expand their empires, and always Hindu kings use the word that we are doing dharma yudh. So if I am a Hindu, I will say dharma yudh, very good. Jihad, very bad. Crusade, very bad. So now the history has become very simple. You don't have to think much. Just see the religion of the particular king. If it matches with your religion, that is excellent. So if the king belonging to your religion goes to Kabul and Kandahar, Bali and Sumatra, it's a brave act. But if the king from the other religion comes and rules here, that's a very bad act. So this is what history has been reduced to in the hands of the people who are very short-sighted, very narrow-minded. And the crux of the history, what should be the crux of history? Why we should study history? How should it guide us? The basic thing about history, production, social relations, people, their plight, I think that should be the focus of history, and that has been lost.